My name is Daniel Kwok, one half of the Kwok Brothers, and as of this recording, I am an 8-figure real estate investor and an 8-figure entrepreneur. Now, because I think this is important to mention for the purpose of the video, I did not grow up rich, and I certainly did not meet the billionaire connections I'm going to reference in this video through my parents. In fact, my dad's been a church pastor for over 30 years, and without getting into detail, our family grew up pretty poor. Now that said, in my journey of starting and scaling multiple different companies and my real estate portfolio ever since I was 18 years old, throughout my career, I had the fortune of meeting with and being mentored by billionaires across many various industries. And quite frankly, I started noticing a pattern throughout the years on what they all had in common. And also for additional context, I'm going to be talking about my billionaire connections that are self-made and not the ones where they inherited their money or their dad's company. It's more so they started the company or their dad was already in business, but they simply just took that to the next level to where it became a billion-dollar company. Now in this video, I'm going to mention 3 things, 3 habits or 3 hacks that I've noticed from not just 1, 2, but all the billionaires I have in my network in which they all do mindsets, whatever you want to call it, right? And the first one is that their first job they ever had was to never earn, but more so to learn. And what I mean by that specifically is that when they were 18 or in their early 20s, even in their mid 20s, they had a solid understanding that they had 30, 40, 50 years left in their career, and they focused entirely on what they could learn and become to set up for the next 30, 40, 50 years. You know, Abraham Lincoln has a great quote where he says, "If you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I will spend 4 hours sharpening the axe." And that's the mentality that I noticed that all of these billionaires have, not just with themselves, but the people that they mentor and the team members that are in their organization as well. So for me, when I open up TikTok or Instagram Reels and I see all these kids that are 22, 24, talk about how they have Lamborghinis and they're making 7 figures and how there's so many different figures out there in the world that are now telling these young kids that if they're not making $500,000 or $1 million by the time they're 23, 24, 25, they're a failure. Well, it kind of disappoints me a little bit. And even this whole culture of you've got to lock in. Well, for me, when I see other people lock in, they're doing all of these activities that make the money, sure, but really aren't teaching them anything that will set them up to be even bigger when they're 30, 40, 50, or 60. Because one of the most common patterns I realized with all the billionaires that I have in my network that mentor me is that, well, they didn't really hit their billionaire status until at the youngest, they were in their mid 40s. And as cliche as it sounds, I have met so many kids who are TikTok influencers, Instagram influencers, or they start a drop shipping company, which I swear if I hear another 17-year-old kid ask me about drop shipping, I'm going to lose it. Because when I see their journey and I see the journey that I got on from going from 0 to being an 8-figure entrepreneur and having multiple portfolio companies that perform multi-million dollars in revenue every single year, I see that they sacrifice growing a billion-dollar company for having a 7-figure company today. Because what they're not doing is what my mentors did, which is optimizing their 20s so that they can grow a multi-billion-dollar company and not just employ a 7-figure operation. Now, that said, I know what a lot of you guys might be thinking, or maybe in the middle of commenting right now, which is, hey, idiot, you have to have a 7-figure company first before you can get to 8 figures. Guess Asians aren't as smart as I thought. What the heck? And that's not what I'm saying. Obviously, the fastest way to build a billion-dollar company is to do $100 million first. And the fastest way to do that is to do 10 million, and then 1 million, and then 100,000. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, however, is a lot of the younger generation today optimizing their life and putting that 7-figure lifestyle on a pedestal with the Lamborghinis and all these other things to where they don't think about what they need to do today to one day have a billion-dollar company. And when I think about the mentality of all of my billionaire contacts, they don't really drive Lamborghinis or Ferraris. In fact, every single decision that they make is to optimize on how they can grow their organization bigger, better, and more efficient. In fact, the highest net worth and richest person that I regularly communicate with and I have in my personal contacts list owns multiple NBA teams and has a $19 billion company out of California. Well, he drives an old Cadillac. In fact, this one time where he took me to a game of the team he owns, and I remember we sat courtside and we went to the private entrance where you see all, where the players park and all the executives park, and he kind of just pulled me aside and goes, hey, Daniel, let me show you something. And look at the cars over there. Yeah, Ferraris, Lambos, Rolls-Royce, G-Wagons, those are the players' cars. Let me show you over on that side. Those Toyotas, Cadillacs, Hyundais, yeah, those are the owners. And what he told me right after showing me that was, listen, these guys over here are the owners. Every single decision that they make, all the way down to what car they drive, is to optimize how could we build our company bigger, better? How do I take care of my people and my organization? And how do we win over a 30-year period of time, not just a 3-month period of time? Now, that being said, the second thing I learned from a lot of my billionaire contacts was that they all started their own business, but more importantly, they stuck with it, and that's the only thing that they invested their time, money, and relationships into. And in fact, when I see a lot of people my age that are well on their way to becoming billionaires, like my friend Alex Hormozi, or even a guy like Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett focused just on Berkshire Hathaway. Alex focuses just on acquisition.com. And for myself and my brother, well, we focus just on the Kwok brothers. And again, this had a lot to do with us seeing what these billionaire contacts were doing because, well, one of my good friends who just recently sold his company for $877 million, I remember we were having lunch about 5 years ago, and I was asking him, hey, why don't you ever invest in real estate or anything else? And he told me, shockingly, that over the last 30 years, because he was in his early 60s at the time, that the only thing that he put every single one of his dollars, cents, to the penny was on growing his own company and reinvesting his resources to make his company bigger and better. And well, this kind of confirmed for me to be true when I see 99% of other people focusing on cryptocurrency or Forex or dropshipping or real estate or this or that, and they divert their time into 4 or 5 different things, hoping that one of them will hit big. And well, it kind of reminds me of what Dan Kennedy, who's the godfather of marketing, says, which is nothing works well if you don't work well. Well, and it's kind of true, especially in this generation where everything, including technology, is there to serve us, where if we don't like something, we can just easily scroll past to the next video, or they could easily swipe left or right on a person if they don't meet our needs and our wants and our desires and expectations. And unfortunately, because of that mentality, we tend to not have any accountability as entrepreneurs or just people in general when things don't work out. Which is why on YouTube comments and Instagram comments and TikTok comments, it's always 99% negative of, oh, well, that didn't work and that's a scam and this person's a scam. And well, maybe there's some truth and a little bit of truth to what they're saying, but it just points towards the ability for people to never take accountability and maybe question, well, if it works for that person, what is that person doing that I'm not doing? Oh, it's that they're focusing on that one thing and that's the only thing that they do, whereas I have 4 or 5 other things going on. So if there's another common hack or lesson I learned from all my billionaire contacts throughout the years, is that every single one of them focused on that one company that they built, and they focused on scaling that and reinvesting it better than everybody else. Now, the third and final thing that I learned from a lot of my billionaire contacts that's universal across them is the fact that their most prized possession was their network. Now, I know there's this quote that goes, your network is your net worth, or it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I gotta be honest, I absolutely hate that quote, and so does every single billionaire that I know. However, there is a revised version by Robert Herjavec, who's a shark on Shark Tank, who actually changed the quote, and I happen to really like the revised version, which is, your what you know should make you the person that other people wanna get to know. And I absolutely love that because it's value first, then network. And that's how all of my billionaire contacts have created their network, is thinking about, well, what do people value in the setting that I'm in, and how do I actually go forth and deliver that value? In fact, one of the things I've learned from my billionaire contacts and how they network is that they always ask themselves the question of, where am I at today? Where am I going tomorrow? And who are the people I need to know today to be able to actually make that happen? And they did it to me. where they text me or they text other individuals and go, hey, do you by any chance happen to know somebody that's this, and who achieved at least that in that particular industry? And they get very, very specific about who they need and who they want. And I'll tell you, I've never met a single billionaire who've expanded their network by going to networking events. It's always based on friend of a friend of a friend, or hey, could you connect me with this person, or can you connect me with that person? So it's not based on quantity, but more so on quality. Quality being defined again as the utility and practicalness of where they are today and where they want to go in 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. In fact, I want to end this video by sharing a story that happened when I was 23 years old. So I was raising capital for a real estate deal when I was 23 years old. And we were having lunch at this really high established restaurant in Chicago. And in walks an individual, and the person that I was raising money from, who by the way was a very high net worth individual, pointed that person out and goes, oh, hey, there's my buddy Mark. And Daniel, I don't know if you've met a billionaire yet, but you're about to. And he waves Mark over, and Mark's not his real name, by the way, just using a fake name for protection and privacy of that person. And as he's walking over, he's telling me, yeah, Mark owns one of the largest manufacturing arms for X, Y, and Z industries. And so I talk to Mark and I kind of go, hi, my name is Daniel. And I ask him the question that every single one of us wants to ask, which is, hey, very equivalent to how there's only 400 players in the NBA, but there's millions of people that play basketball. Why are you a billionaire? There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of millionaires out there in the United States, but there's very few billionaires in the world. And he goes, Daniel, I'll tell you what all of my peers and millionaire friends focused on, and I'll tell you what I focused on. He goes, millionaires focus on strategy, execution, industries, technology, markets, whatever it may be. I, above all things, because I still focused on those, I, above all things, put people first. I focused on people, as in what do people want, why do they want it, and how do they want it. I focused on those three questions for the last 30 years, and it's gotten me to where I am today. It doesn't matter what industry you pick, what strategy you pick, what product, what market. If you ask those three questions, is what do people want, why do they want it, and how do they want it? It's like you will become a billionaire, especially if you can answer those questions better than everybody else. So that being said, I hope you guys found this video enjoyable and valuable, and I'll see you guys in the next one.